fleeting glory, who was king of Iraq, sat under a tree to relax and to drink alcohol. He called Adi, a wise man, to come and advise him. Adi said, "O king, do you know what this tree says?" The king said, "No, what does it say?" Adi replied, "Many people sought rest around me, to drink wine mixed with pure water. Soon after, time began to play with them. Some harm befell them, and time is such, always changing from one state to another, being tormented by the eventuality described to him. The king became embittered. He quit drinking, and he remained miserable until he died. As the Shah of Iran celebrated the passing of 2,500 years since the establishment of the Persian Empire, he began to make plans for expanding the scope of his power to lands outside of his reign. Then, in the blink of an eye, he was toppled from power. You give the kingdom to whom you will, and you take the kingdom from whom you will. Chased from his castle and his world, he died in exile as a poor man in a far-off country. No one shed tears for him. How many of gardens and spring have the Pharaoh's people left, and green crops fields, and goodly places and comforts of life wherein they used to take delight. A similar case is that of Ceausescu, the former president of Romania. He ruled for 22 years, and he had 70,000 personal guards, but in the end it was his own people who surrounded his castle. They tore apart his body, one limb after another. Then he had no group or party to help him against Allah, nor was he one of those who could save themselves. Thus he died without anything to show for his long reign. No worldly goods did he take with him, and no prospect of prosperity in the hereafter. Another example is the former leader of the Philippines, Marcos. He gathered wealth and power for himself, while heaping misery upon his people. In turn, Allah made him to feel that some misery as he was driven away from his country, his family, and his power, with no sanctuary to turn to. He died ignominiously. Even his own people refused to allow him to be buried in the Philippines. Did he not make their plot go astray? So Allah seized him and with punishment. For his last is saying, "I am your Lord Most High." And first, his saying, "O chiefs, I know not that you have a God other than I." Verse transgression. So we punished each of them for his sins. Performing virtuous deeds is the crown on the head of a happy life. To attain happiness and peace, you must be from those who hasten to do virtuous and beautiful deeds. The Prophet said, "Strive toward that which benefits you and seek help from Allah." A companion of the Prophet Muhammad asked him to be one of his companions in paradise. He replied, "Help me to help you by prostrating often, for Allah will raise you by one degree." for every prostration that you make for him. Another companion asked the Prophet to inform him of one deed that was comprehensive of much good. He told him that your tongue should remain moist with the remembrance of Allah. In response to a third such seeker of good, the Prophet said, don't curse others and don't hit others with your hand. If someone were to curse you regarding something that he knows about you, don't curse him regarding something that you know about him. And don't disparage any kind of good deed, even if that deed consisted of pouring some water from your bucket into the container of the one who seeks drink. And march forth in the way which leads to forgiveness from your Lord, and for paradise. Verily, they used to hasten on to do good deeds, and those foremost in Islamic faith of monotheism, and in performing righteous deeds in the life of this world on the very first call to embrace Islam, will be foremost in paradise. Do not delay when it comes to doing good and righteous deeds. And for this let all those who want to strive hasten earnestly to the obedience of Allah. After being stabbed and while his blood was gushing out, Umar, may Allah be pleased with him, said to a young man who was dragging his lower garment on the ground, O son of my brother, lift up your garment, for to do so is more righteous and purer for your clothes. Even during the pangs of death he invited others to do good. To any of you that chooses to go forward by working righteous deeds or to remain behind by committing sins, verily happiness is not achieved by sleeping much, by seeking comfort, or by being averse to doing good deeds. But Allah was averse to their being sent forth, so he made them lag behind. And it was said to them, sit you among those who sit at home. The logic of downtrodden and lethargic souls is, and they said, march not forth in the heat, who say to their brethren, when they travel through the earth or go out to fight, if they had stayed with us, they would not have died or been killed. We are prohibited from lagging behind when it comes to doing good deeds. What is the matter with you, that when you are asked to march forth in the cause of Allah, jihad, you cling heavily to the earth? There is certainly among you who would linger behind from fighting in Allah's cause, but he clung to the earth, and am I not even able to be as this crow? This is because they loved and preferred the life of this world over that of the hereafter. And do not dispute with one another, lest you lose courage and your strength departs. And when they stand up for the prayer, they stand with laziness. The Prophet, blessings and peace be upon him, said, O Allah, I seek refuge in you from laziness. The wise person subdues his life and works for what comes after death. A weak person obeys himself in its desires, and though he performs no deed that is worthy of reward, he keeps vain and false hopes in Allah.